Okay, this learning target is about finding roots of a quadratic equation. And I wanted to remind you that when I say roots, that's the same thing as saying zeros or solutions to a quadratic equation. Those three words are synonymous. And these are two values of x when y equals 0. So what we're looking for is the x-intercepts. Okay, so this is different than when we're talking about y equals mx plus b, and b is the y-intercept. The roots and what we're generally looking for are the x-intercepts when y equals 0. So, for example, in this equation, y equals 16x squared plus 120x plus 3. If I wanted to use a graph to help me find the solutions of this, basically what I'm going to do is set the equation equal to 0, and then what you could do is graph this equation, and you could look for the roots. So I wanted to show you on Desmos how I would do that. Oops. So it was y equals negative 16x squared plus 120x plus 3. So when we graph this on Desmos, if I were to like zoom way out, you could see the whole thing. Obviously it's very stretched parabola. But Desmos does this feature where it actually will find the roots for you. I don't know if you can see that on your computer screen, but there's actually points already here. So you can hover your mouse over it and it can give you your solution. So negative 0.025 and positive 7.525. Okay? So basically we can use Desmos to help us with this. I know this picture uses the Inspires. I think the best program out there right now that we can use is Desmos. So our two solutions based on graphing that equation would just be and then I don't remember what my other one was now, of course. Positive 7.525. Graphing, unless we have whole number roots, is kind of about estimation. So there they are. Another thing we've talked about is factoring. Factoring uses the zero product property, and I want to remind you of what that is. So the zero product property says, and you don't have to write this down, just kind of follow along here, says that if you multiply two numbers or two terms, you multiply them and you get 0, then either x equals 0 and or, because they could both equal 0, y equals 0. Okay, so it's saying that, x could be a number and it wouldn't matter what it was. If y was 0, you're going to get 0. Or it wouldn't matter what y was, let's say it was negative 5. If your x is 0, you're going to get 0. So you know that if the answer to a multiplication problem is 0, then either one or the other parts of the product multipliers are 0. So what you do is you take an equation and you try to find two factors, which is just really trying to change like a binomial or a trinomial into a product equal to 0. So on this one, I see that I can pull an x term out. So if I pull an x out, what I mean by that is I divide an x out of each term. So I'll end up with 7x plus 2 in the parentheses. And then I've got two products. I've got this part times this part equals 0. So I want to think about the two things. So either x is equal to 0, that's one of our solutions, or 7x plus 2 is equal to 0. That whole term is equal to 0. So we sometimes have to solve this down here to get our solution. So x is either equal to negative 2/7 because that's what would make this term equal 0, or x is equal to 0. Those would be our two factors. Okay. And then also this one here, first of all, I want to remind you, you have to get that equal to 0. You can't use the zero product property unless you have a 0. So you're going to start by just getting your equation equivalent to 0. So I just subtracted 5 from each side. And then you're going to look for two factors that are equivalent to this trinomial. So I know that the first terms have to both be n because my first term is an n squared. Then I know that these two need to multiply to 10 and add to 7. Okay? And these are both positive, so I know I'm going to be adding on each. Okay? So I automatically think 5 and 2. And then I have to think about my two solutions. So what will make n plus 5 equal 0? So what will make n plus 5 equal 0? That would be n equal to negative 5. And what would make n plus 2 equal 0? That would be an n equal to negative 2. So there's our two solutions, or our two roots of that quadratic equation. And then finally, we've used the quadratic formula before. It's right here if you need it to write down. But at this point in advanced algebra, you need to memorize this. So if you haven't done that yet, put it on a flashcard, do whatever you need to do to get this to get this memorized. So again, make sure you set it equal to 0. So here, 3x squared plus 5x plus 8, I would subtract 3x squared from each side. So I'll have 0 equals negative 3x squared plus 5x plus 8. And then I have my a, b, and c, and I plug those in. So negative b, so negative 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, 5 squared, minus 4 times a, which is negative 3, times c, which is 8, all divided by 2 times a. So I have my setup here. Please make sure you write this out, even if you do it all in your calculator, and then kind of work our way down. So the first thing I always do is work down the parentheses here. So I just might type that whole thing into my calculator. So 5 squared minus 4 times negative 3 times 8. So that's 121. Don't know why I made that square root so long, don't quite need it. And 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. And then I'm going to estimate this, square root of 121. So I'll have, so I'm going to go square root of the answer equals 11. Probably could have done that in my head. Minus 6. So then break that down, we're gonna have two roots, negative 5 plus 11 divided by negative 6, which would be 6 over negative 6, which is negative 1. There's one solution. Or negative 5 minus 11 divided by negative 6, which would be negative 16 divided by 6. I'm going to leave this answer as a fraction, although you could do a decimal if you wanted to. So I'm just going to reduce, divide by 2, that gives me 8/3, negative 8/3. So there's my two solutions. Another way to do it there. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. You've got 3 equations here. I want you to solve it using the method that you think is best, using each at least once. So pick one to do graphing with, one to do factoring with, and one to do the quadratic equation with.